In 2004, Mark Zuckerberg invented something called the Facebook in his dorm room with the sole intention of connecting students to one another solely at his own university. Over time, he extended that network to connect more universities and more college students, and then ultimately it became the social network that we all know and love today with over 2 billion users globally on the platform. But I love it that education is at our core. It's at the true foundation of what the platform was invented for. And when we think about the mission of the company, we think about how it can be used to build learning communities across the globe. My name is Jennifer Howard, and my role at Facebook is to work with the world's largest education institutions to help them, from a business perspective, recruit and retain students. And I work with them not just from a marketing and advertising perspective, but to utilize the platforms and technology to connect their students through their entire journey. So what I'll share with you today are some of the great examples that we have on how education companies and institutions build learning communities through our platforms. The mission of Facebook is to give people the power to build community and to bring the world closer together. And this is a big mission, and it's obviously very ambitious. And it's not one that should be limited to just one company or one organization or even one technology platform. But as I mentioned, with 2 billion users on the platform globally, we think we have a responsibility, and we can play a pivotal role in creating a safe, civically minded, informed, and engaged, inclusive community globally across the world. And so what does that mean when we actually think about education and building those communities? So in order to understand that, I'll give you a little bit of a glimpse into our product roadmap and how we think about technology over the next 10 years. And to orient you across this continuum, across 3, 5, and 10, we're actually going to start with the 10. So start all the way over at the left, because what we think is that we need to build technology today that can ultimately support products, ecosystems, and services that will last 10 years and beyond. So when we think 10 years out, we think about what technology will be required. So everything starts with connectivity. We need to make sure that everybody globally has access to the internet. So we do this through Wi-Fi programs, infrastructure programs, satellites, and drones. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is really at the core of everything we do at our size and scale, and it really helps us develop communications tools that really enhance vision, language, reasoning, planning, and everything that we do from understanding the content across our platforms. And then, of course, virtual reality and augmented reality, which I'll talk a lot about in terms of how it's transforming the educational experiences, but that's yet another platform that is becoming quite a buzzword, but is really important as we think about technological advances. So when we think about building the technology, then we think about what products do we need to build that will support and be needed and useful and meaningful to billions of users globally. So there's a sampling of a few there that I'll walk through in more detail, including Workplace and Messenger, but another one that I would highlight for you here is video. Video is one of the fastest growing formats that we're seeing across the internet in general, and it's certainly true on Facebook platforms as well. Many of these products already have more than 1 billion users, and video is no exception. And you can see these across different surfaces, so including both our Watch tab, which is a new surface in Facebook where you can watch original programming and original content, and then certainly the Stories format, which is exploding across Instagram, which is more raw and user-generated type of video formats. And so when we think about building these products, the one thing that we are always keeping in mind is that we want to make sure that all the users and all the people on our platform are interacting with these products in a meaningful way. So we want it to be very active and meaningful and less passive than what we've seen in the past. And that's a core tenet to how we're thinking about product development going forward. Once a product reaches a decent scale and scope, then that's when we start to think about it in terms of building an ecosystem and developing it into a long-term sustainable platform. And that's where you see there in our 3-year plan for Facebook and Instagram and Audience Network. Clearly already standalone platforms in their own right, but the ecosystems that get built around them include developers and partners and businesses and educational institutions that can ultimately access these platforms to advance their own missions and their own goals. And that's how we think about the growth. And so when you think about the technology and where we're headed from a platform perspective, then we can start to think about how does this ultimately apply to educational institutions. So within Facebook, we have cross-functional teams across many, many aspects of our company under the umbrella of Facebook for Education. And our mission and our goal, the sub-mission of our group, is connecting people who are passionate about learning. So that's everybody. That's students and teachers and administrators and faculty, parents, anybody who is passionate about whether it's a student environment or for a lifelong learner. And so I'm going to share with you some examples of the ways that the platform has actually been able to connect these people in ways that we think are quite innovative and quite impactful. So when we think about the 3 ways that this happens, we think across 3 pillars. We think about connecting, so using tools for collaboration and communication. We think about advancing, which is really about connecting higher education institutions or large education institutions to their students to connect them to curriculum opportunities as well as career opportunities that will ultimately advance their lives. And then we think about transforming, which is really about how does technology help transform the delivery of the curriculum and the student experience in the classroom itself. So I'll walk you through a few examples. Groups and pages is the most obvious way that people can connect and form community on Facebook. Anyone who has a Facebook profile, and so I'm assuming many of you, can start a group anytime you'd like, and anyone who's on Facebook will have access to be able to join that group if that's the way that you allow it. The pages have different settings and groups have different settings, and so you can make it an open group so anyone can join. You can make it a closed group so it's just a certain amount of people. You can make it secret so only the people that are even invited even know about it. There's a variety of different access settings, but it's easy to set up, and anyone with a Facebook profile would then have access to be able to do that. A couple of examples that I really like in the education space of how these groups are really helping to propel education forward are here. So the first is Tech Prep. This is a group where it connects students and mentors with kids who want to learn how to code. And so these mentors are able to give them advice not just on coding itself and not just on how to advance their curriculum, but then also career advice and career counseling or ways for them to think about how they could become the next generation of tech leaders. And so this community itself, which was developed by a group within Facebook, also does help them create that support in the community that they might not otherwise have if they're in communities where there aren't other tech leaders or where there isn't necessarily a robust STEM program in their school. This gives them access to people they wouldn't otherwise have access to, which really just speaks to the power of technology driving community at scale. Another example is Inspired. So this is less about curriculum and how do we help the children or the students actually advance from a learning perspective, but what Inspire does is give teachers and schools and teens access to tools that they would ultimately be able to use to create inclusive communities and to create a safe environment in their school. You know, when you consider that 77% of the time, high school students report being bored or tired or stressed out. Yet 88% of them report that they would much rather feel happy and energized and excited about their work. But there is a wide variety of pressures and issues that impact them that ultimately impact their ability to learn. This site, this group, ultimately gives the teachers access to tools that helps the students really manage, particularly teens, the emotional drain that they might be facing and the impact that that has on their studies, so that ultimately they can achieve everything they want academically while living in a safe, inclusive, and ultimately diverse community. So just 2 examples here of the way that some of these very organized groups can help advance education. There are hundreds of thousands of groups on Facebook, and some are large and some are very small, and some can be very local. Here's an example of a parent and teacher group from a teacher who, this is Miss Parker's classroom. And you can see here that she is connecting with her parents of these school-age children on a variety of things. And for any of you who might have school-age children anyway, is that you might get a lot of emails, you might get a lot of information from the school on a daily basis. This actually allows you to see how this could work in a much more streamlined way. Homework assignments, parenting resources, signing up for your parent-teacher conferences, live streaming the concerts, live streaming the performances that the children might do on a regular basis. And this is an excellent example of creating this lifeline for both parents and teachers to ultimately be able to connect in a way that they haven't yet been able to connect before. So another great example of connecting is Workplace. So for those of you that might not be familiar, Workplace is an internal version of Facebook that can be offered to companies, businesses, and also educational institutions. And so everybody within that institution signs up for a page, and it becomes different and separate from the personal page that you might already have on Facebook. But it gives you access to all of the same functionality, sharing tools, commenting, likes, and everything that you are already used to using in your personal Facebook world. One example we'd like to share about some success with Workplace was across the Boston public school system. So the districts have signed up for Workplace to enable peer-to-peer sharing across the parents, or across the teachers and the administrators and the faculty. And after months of usage, they were evaluating the groups that had been formed within. And the surprising thing that they found was that the largest and most active group was of 700 cafeteria workers across the district. And so these workers were using Workplace and the group that they had created to swap shifts, to share meal ideas, to solve supply issues or shortages across the district in a really scalable and a very efficient way. And now they're running a much more operationally efficient operation. But if you think about it, it's the cafeteria staff and the bus drivers and the custodial staff, who are often underrepresented when we think about the technology advances within the schools themselves. These people are not provided with email addresses often, they're not given mobile devices, laptops, etc. And so because everybody has a mobile device, and because they were able to access this way, they're able to take advantage of technology in a way that they weren't able to before. The other thing that's great about this is because of our passion and our commitment at Facebook to education overall, Workplace is free to educational institutions and nonprofits. And so even for Boston Public School System, they're able to use this for free, which is great for their budget. And then ultimately, it's having impact on their business in ways, or in their district in ways that they had not yet even imagined. And the final way I'll talk about in terms of connection is Messenger. Many of you have probably used Messenger to communicate with your friends through whether your mobile device or when you're connecting through Workplace or other areas. And this is a really innovative example between Jack Kent Cook and the College Board, who are both very service-minded organizations looking to help college students succeed. And they work together to develop a bot on Messenger to help answer frequently asked questions for underrepresented students who need financial aid assistance. And so this is giving them access to financial aid information, to scholarship information, and other tools that they might not yet have had access to. And so just a really innovative way to be able to solve to fill a gap in information for students in a really scalable and innovative way. So those are our platforms right now for connection. So we're going to skip ahead now to advancing. Advancing is really about connecting higher education institutions to potential students, and then nurturing that relationship through technology across the life cycle of that student. And so we have advertising and marketing solutions at Facebook that work really, really well across the entire journey. And so you can see everything from early phases of discovery when students are trying to determine which schools to go to or which programs to select, all the way through research and application, to enrollment, to starting, and then ultimately to graduating. And the advertising tools impact every step of the way, and then as you can imagine, the connectivity tools also help to maintain that relationship between the universities and the students throughout their entire journey. What you see here on the left is an innovative use of Instagram stories from an advertising perspective by New York Code and Design Academy. They're one of the first institutions to actually experiment with the format, and you can see it's a lightweight, light touch, easy to produce video format, and as I mentioned before, it's one of the areas where we're seeing a lot of explosive growth. So schools work with us across this entire gamut with both video as well as display advertising throughout the newsfeed in a really targeted and efficient way. So when we think about the connections that they're able to make, we think about how that advances both the students to get to the schools and then ultimately the schools to help them achieve advancement in their careers. What I'd like to highlight here is a really great example of how both advance and connectivity work together. This is Strayer University, and they have recently partnered with Cheddar, who is a live on-demand video network, and they have created the first online MBA that is focused solely on entrepreneurship, and they're delivering the curriculum through Facebook groups. So all the functionality that I've already shared with you today comes together right here in this example, where the curriculum is delivered to the group. The group is private. It's only to the 300 students who are currently enrolled in the MBA, and they get their content, they get the curriculum, they get to engage with one another in ways that feels very native to them on Facebook. And of course, it goes without saying that in order to recruit those students, they used Facebook newsfeed as an opportunity to advertise to ultimately fill those spots. And so the program is still relatively young. They're only in their 4th quarter. And one of the things that they've actually started to see change over these 4 quarters is that at the beginning, there were only 5 kind of subgroups within the actual the student body of this program, and now there are 15. And the great thing about that is that, again, it shows that the innovation of the students to be able to connect with one another on topics and themes or classwork that's important to them. But what Strayer is seeing is a major improvement in terms of attendance in the online classes and then also student outcomes. So in the time that they've gone from 5 to 15 groups, they've started to see an improvement of 6% in the outcomes of the overall classes. So again, just showing how connectivity and the building of community could ultimately help them all advance as they're thinking about their educational goals. So last, we'll talk about transforming. So what you see here is Oculus, which is a platform that is virtual reality. And if you haven't had an opportunity to test it, you can. It is out there on the main showroom marketplace area for you guys to play with and to test. And virtual reality has become a bit of a buzzword, and everybody's wondering, what does it do and what is it ultimately going to mean? But I think that in the education space specifically, it has such a great opportunity to really be able to transform the experiences in the classroom and to ultimately give people an opportunity to experience other human realities in ways that they wouldn't have been able to do before. So I'll share with you a few examples of some great educational apps that are available even right now. So the first set, as we cluster them, is really around empathy education, which is really about putting yourselves in other people's shoes and really understanding the human condition. So a couple of examples here. My New Home is an app that actually puts you into Tanzania as a child who needs to leave your home and ultimately relocate to a vast refugee camp. And so that way, the children that are experiencing this app can really start to understand what that would look like, feel like, and understand a little bit more about the refugee crisis that's happening globally. Another example, notes on blindness. A man by the name of John Hull ultimately became blind after years and years of deterioration of his vision. And once he started going through both the physical changes of losing his eyesight, but he started obviously identifying the cognitive changes that he was experiencing as well as the emotional drain of losing his vision, he started to record a series of audio cassettes to ultimately record his experience. Those audio cassettes have become the basis of this app to actually help people understand the physical, cognitive, and emotional changes as you lose your eyesight, which again creates a lot of empathy as you're thinking about the people around the world who have to live with that every day. Lifelong learning, a couple of fun examples here. Very in the middle there is a safari app. You get transplanted to Kenya. You get to feed baby elephants. You get to stand in the middle of a stampede of zebras. And the cool thing here is that it's all actual video. There's no CGI. And so it really is a transformative experience for those that are trying to understand more about wildlife in Africa. The body at the bottom there is really similar to the movie that many of you may have seen back in the, I guess the 80s or 90s, which was Inner Space. So you get to you get to be transported into the body, see the bloodstream, see cells, see how the organs work. Obviously great for students, great for biology classes, great for any of us who are pursuing lifelong learning in biology. And then last, on space exploration, is one of the very popular areas of exploration. It is limited to so few, and so giving people access to be able to do that through a VR experience is a very compelling idea. So Apollo 11 being transported to the moon with that very first crew, and then even Mars Odyssey being able to take a walk on the red planet. So really great applications and a lot of imagination that's going into how we think about VR experiences and what it's ultimately going to mean for students in the classrooms. But of course, the headset itself can be relatively pricey. VR is not yet in a place where it is available to everybody yet, but we're making strides in that as well. The costs are coming down. And in addition, again, because of our commitment at Facebook to help support educational environments, we worked really closely with the state of Arkansas, and we shipped them 400 units of Oculus, so that way at least there's one unit in every high school in Arkansas right now, so they have access to these apps as well as others to really start to put this technology in the hands of all students, regardless of the overall budgets and spendability of those districts. So this is really how we're thinking about transformation and what it will ultimately mean for education. So we like to say at Facebook that this journey is 1% finished, and we really do mean that across all of our platforms. Even on Facebook, where there's 2 billion users, or on Instagram, where we have 800 million, we still have a long way to go in terms of what our technology is going to be able to do for the world, what it's going to be able to do for communities, and certainly what it's going to mean for education. But based on how far we've come from the dorm room in 2004 to where we are today in 2018, we're really optimistic, we're really ambitious, and we're really excited about where we're going to go. So we look forward to partnering with all of you on any initiatives that advance your mission and help you build learning communities as well. Thank you.